5 brilliant women, trusted to save lives, used their medical knowledge to kill. And when the truth surfaced, America discovered that the deadliest killers weren't hiding in the shadows, but in hospital white coats. They were among the best in their fields. 5 women who had earned respect, wealth, and prestige through medicine. Their names appeared in journals, on hospital plaques, and on the lips of grateful patients. Yet beneath the surface of honor and trust, something dark pulsed. They had all sworn to preserve life, but each would come to be known for taking it. Their stories spanned different states, specialties, and motives, but their crimes shared a single trait: cold, calculated precision. When the first case broke, it seemed isolated, a tragic anomaly in an otherwise noble profession. But as years passed, a disturbing pattern emerged. Each woman used her medical expertise not to heal, but to manipulate, harm, and kill. Their victims were not random. They were chosen, studied, and controlled like experiments in a lab. The media called them the Angels of Death, a name that both fascinated and horrified the public. Investigators were stunned at how easily these doctors had hidden behind hospital walls, their crimes masked by medical jargon and falsified reports. Every revelation sent shockwaves through the nation, eroding public faith in those meant to protect life. Families who once trusted doctors now questioned every diagnosis and prescription. The 5 doctors were not connected by friendship or profession, but by a chilling psychological thread, an obsession with power over life itself. They wanted to feel invincible, to stand at the threshold between existence and extinction. When they were finally exposed, America watched in disbelief as these once celebrated women were led away in handcuffs. Their faces, once symbols of success, became reminders of betrayal. The story of the 5 doctors is not just about murder. It is about how ambition, pride, and intellect, when twisted by ego, can turn healers into monsters. Dr. Rachel Croft was admired in Boston's medical community for her calm intelligence and groundbreaking work in neurology. She specialized in sleep disorders, often appearing on television to discuss the science of dreams and insomnia. Patients trusted her instantly. Her gentle tone and confident demeanor created an atmosphere of safety. But behind her soft-spoken nature was an obsession that blurred the boundaries of ethics and sanity. Dr. Croft believed that the key to unlocking human consciousness lay within the deepest stages of sleep. To prove her theory, she began experimenting with unapproved sedatives and monitoring patients through the night without full consent. At first, the deaths seemed accidental, rare complications during routine studies. But hospital audits revealed an unsettling pattern. Every victim had been under Croft's supervision, and each death occurred within minutes of being administered her experimental doses. Investigators later uncovered secret notes detailing her attempts to induce temporary brain death, hoping to map neural activity at the moment between life and oblivion. She viewed her patients as test subjects, and their suffering as progress. When confronted, Croft remained eerily composed, claiming that every great scientific discovery required sacrifice. Her research lab contained dozens of hidden vials, encrypted data, and a list of participants marked with unsettling symbols. In court, medical experts described her methods as torture disguised as research. Families wept as they learned how their loved ones had died not from illness, but from one woman's hunger for recognition. During sentencing, Croft stared ahead in silence, showing no remorse. Her final words to the judge were chillingly simple: "I just wanted to understand the brain." Today, she serves life in prison, a fallen genius whose quest for discovery became one of the darkest scandals in American medical history. Dr. Lana Price lived in a quiet Texas suburb, admired by her neighbors and respected by her patients. She worked as a family physician, balancing her medical career with a picture-perfect life alongside her husband, Thomas, an architect with a thriving firm. To outsiders, their marriage looked flawless: beautiful home, luxury cars, and weekend charity events. But beneath the surface, tension brewed. Financial pressure had begun to mount, and arguments behind closed doors grew sharper. When Thomas suddenly fell ill, everyone believed it was stress-related. He complained of fatigue, nausea, and chest pains, symptoms that seemed to match natural heart trouble. As his condition worsened, Lana appeared devoted, carefully monitoring his vitals and preparing his meals with precision. No one suspected that those very meals were the instrument of his death. Weeks after his funeral, toxicology reports revealed elevated potassium chloride levels in his blood, far beyond what the human body could naturally produce. Detectives re-examined his medical records and discovered that every dosage of his supplements and medications had been prescribed by Lana herself. When confronted, she did not deny it. Instead, she explained in a detached tone that she wanted to test how the body responds when pushed to its absolute limit. Her reasoning was clinical, void of emotion. She described her husband as the perfect subject, healthy, reliable, predictable. Investigators found a hidden journal in her office containing detailed notes about his daily reactions to the poison. During trial, prosecutors portrayed her as a woman who valued control more than love, a doctor who turned her medical expertise into a weapon. The jury took less than 4 hours to convict her. As she was led away, she smiled faintly, whispering that she had only been searching for truth. Her truth, however, was deadly. Dr. Monica Valez built her career in Chicago with precision and ambition. As a cardiologist, she was trusted with the most delicate surgeries and life-or-death decisions. Colleagues described her as disciplined, confident, and intimidatingly intelligent. Her success seemed unstoppable until a series of mysterious deaths in her department began to raise suspicion. Elderly patients, many recovering well after surgery, would suddenly die from unexplained complications. Their charts always listed her as the attending physician. At first, no one questioned it. After all, death was not uncommon in cardiology. But when a young nurse discovered inconsistencies in patient records, the illusion of perfection began to crumble. Hospital administrators uncovered falsified data showing procedures that had never taken place and signatures forged to approve unnecessary operations. The motive soon became clear. Dr. Valez was secretly participating in a pharmaceutical-funded clinical trial that rewarded physicians for patient outcomes, including fatalities linked to experimental treatments. Every death meant more money quietly transferred to her offshore account. When investigators raided her apartment, they found ledgers detailing every payment, coded with medical terms to disguise the transactions. During interrogation, she remained calm, claiming her actions were a step toward medical evolution. She argued that the elderly had lived their lives and that her research would someday save millions. Her arrogance shocked prosecutors and enraged victims' families. The courtroom was silent as she testified, speaking more like a lecturer than a defendant. The judge called her lack of empathy profoundly disturbing before sentencing her to life in prison. Even in confinement, Valez continued to write medical papers, none of which were ever published. She remains unrepentant, convinced she had simply optimized the inevitable. Her story stands as one of medicine's darkest betrayals. Dr. Nina Graham was a celebrated fertility specialist in Los Angeles, admired for her ability to turn heartbreak into hope. Couples from across the country sought her help, trusting her reputation for success and her warm, reassuring smile. Her clinic was modern, luxurious, and filled with photographs of healthy babies she had helped bring into the world. But behind that polished image lay a disturbing ambition. Graham had grown fascinated with genetic manipulation, believing she could create stronger, superior children. Without official approval, she began altering embryos during in vitro fertilization procedures, secretly testing unverified techniques of gene editing. Her goal was to erase hereditary diseases, but she also began experimenting with physical and cognitive traits, pushing science far beyond ethical limits. The results were catastrophic. Several infants born through her clinic suffered severe health problems, organ deformities, neurological issues, and unexplained immune failures. Parents were devastated and confused, never suspecting that the trusted doctor they adored had tampered with their embryos. When one baby died shortly after birth, an autopsy revealed genetic anomalies consistent with unauthorized editing. Investigators raided the clinic, uncovering hidden lab equipment and files marked Project Genesis. The data revealed that Graham had used more than 50 embryos in her private experiments. During questioning, she defended herself coldly, claiming she was pioneering evolution. Her arrogance in the courtroom was staggering. She refused to apologize, insisting that history would one day vindicate her. The parents of her victims filled the courtroom, many holding photos of their sick or deceased children. When the verdict was read, Graham showed no emotion. She was sentenced to life in prison for second-degree murder and medical malpractice of an unprecedented scale. Her case remains one of the most disturbing examples of science. Dr. Sandra Holt was one of Florida's most respected surgeons, known for her precision, discipline, and icy composure in the operating room. Colleagues described her as brilliant but intimidating, someone who demanded absolute obedience from her medical team. Her success was undeniable. She performed hundreds of complex surgeries with near-perfect results. Yet behind the sterile walls of the hospital, Holt's perfectionism had twisted into something far more sinister. When a younger resident, Dr. Marcus Lane, questioned one of her surgical techniques during a routine heart procedure, witnesses noticed a flash of fury in her eyes. The following week, during another operation, Holt made a decision that would change everything. As Lane assisted her, she deliberately severed a vital artery, knowing it would lead to the patient's death within minutes. Her movements were smooth, deliberate, and eerily calm. When chaos erupted in the room, she blamed the resident, accusing him of negligence. The hospital accepted her account, until an anonymous tip arrived months later. Surveillance footage from the operating room revealed Holt's hands making the fatal incision while her face remained expressionless. Investigators soon discovered that the patient who died had filed a formal complaint against her just weeks before the surgery, alleging emotional abuse during pre-op treatment. The evidence pointed to premeditated revenge disguised as a medical error. During her arrest, Holt appeared composed, even smiling faintly as she was led away in handcuffs. At trial, she refused to testify, sitting motionless while prosecutors described her as a surgeon who thought she was God. The courtroom fell silent as the footage played, showing the moment she chose death over duty. The jury took less than 3 hours to convict her. Holt now spends her days in a high-security prison infirmary, stripped of her license, her arrogance finally silenced. The 5 women had lived in different states, worked in separate hospitals, and never crossed paths, yet the eerie similarities in their crimes could not be ignored. When the FBI began analyzing their cases, investigators noticed a chilling pattern that linked them beyond coincidence. Each doctor had used her intelligence and authority to manipulate those around her, operating with the same sense of superiority and detachment. They were all leaders in their fields, praised by colleagues, and admired by patients. Beneath their professional excellence, however, lay a shared darkness, an obsession with control and an absence of empathy. Their crimes were executed with surgical precision, driven not by passion or desperation, but by an intellectual thrill in defying moral boundaries. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit compiled psychological profiles that revealed striking overlaps, narcissistic traits, godlike complexes, and a need to dominate both life and death. The media quickly seized on the findings, dubbing them the 5 Queens of Death. Public fascination exploded as documentaries, books, and endless debates tried to make sense of how healers could become murderers. The FBI concluded that none of the women knew one another but were connected by a collective pathology, an internal belief that their intelligence placed them above consequence. Investigators also discovered that each woman had shown warning signs early in her career: disciplinary complaints dismissed, unexplained patient deaths, and unusual patterns in medical records. These red flags had been overlooked by institutions unwilling to question star doctors who brought in funding and prestige. The connection between the cases forced hospitals nationwide to confront an uncomfortable truth: that brilliance can mask evil. When the final report was released, it warned that the most dangerous killers are often those trusted the most, the ones who wear compassion like a uniform to conceal their cruelty. The trials of the 5 doctors became a national spectacle, each one unfolding like a grim theater of justice. Courtrooms overflowed with reporters, families of victims, and members of the medical community who could not believe that people trained to save lives had chosen to destroy them. Prosecutors presented detailed evidence, altered medical charts, falsified prescriptions, and hidden financial records, showing how each woman had turned her expertise into a weapon. Expert witnesses described the sophistication of their crimes, explaining how they exploited medical systems to avoid detection for years. Defense attorneys tried to argue mental instability, professional burnout, or scientific obsession, but the juries saw through the excuses. Each doctor's cold demeanor only strengthened the prosecution's case. Dr. Rachel Croft stared blankly as her experiments were described in detail. Dr. Lana Price listened without flinching as her journal of poison dosages was read aloud. Dr. Monica Valez smirked when confronted with evidence of her offshore accounts. Dr. Nina Graham appeared detached, as if her actions were still justified by science. Dr. Sandra Holt remained silent, her face unreadable as the footage of her fatal surgery played before the court. Across the trials, one theme echoed. None of them showed remorse. Their confidence, once admired, had become proof of their moral emptiness. Public outrage grew with each verdict. Outside the courthouses, protesters held signs demanding accountability from hospitals and medical boards that had ignored early warnings. Media coverage was relentless, turning the doctors into symbols of corrupted genius. By the end of the 2-year legal battle, all 5 were sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. The final judgments were met with both relief and horror. Justice had been served, but the nation was left questioning how such brilliance could evolve into something so monstrously cold. Inside the cold walls of prison, the 5 women who had once commanded hospitals now lived among thieves and murderers. Their white coats were replaced by gray uniforms, their authority stripped away. Yet even in confinement, their behavior remained unervingly distinct from other inmates. Dr. Rachel Croft spent her days in silence, filling notebooks with sketches of the human brain, refusing to speak to guards or counselors. Dr. Lana Price became known for her meticulous routines, organizing her cell with surgical precision and lecturing others about nutrition, as if still clinging to her professional identity. Dr. Monica Valez tried to maintain her influence, offering medical advice to other prisoners in exchange for cigarettes or protection. Her manipulative charm remained intact, and even behind bars, she cultivated a quiet circle of followers. Dr. Nina Graham requested access to medical journals and petitioned the prison to start a science education program, which was immediately denied. She spent hours staring through the window of her cell, lost in thoughts no one could understand. Dr. Sandra Holt, once a commanding presence in the operating room, became a ghostly figure, avoiding contact and refusing therapy sessions. Prison psychiatrists noted that none of them displayed genuine remorse. Instead, they rationalized their crimes as misunderstood brilliance. The prison system became a living study of psychological disconnection, 5 minds too proud to admit their humanity had failed. Occasionally, journalists sought interviews, but most requests were declined. Rumors spread that the women exchanged letters, analyzing each other's motives as though conducting an academic study. Their notoriety made them both feared and admired by other inmates. Years passed, and time eroded their arrogance, but not their detachment. Each remained trapped, not just by steel bars, but by their own refusal to face the truth of what they had become. Years after their convictions, the legacy of the 5 doctors continued to haunt the medical community. Hospitals across the country were forced to re-examine their internal systems, implementing stricter background checks, mandatory psychological evaluations, and independent audits of all patient deaths. Medical schools began including ethics and psychological awareness as major components of their training, using the 5 Queens of Death as cautionary examples. Their cases became the subject of documentaries, research papers, and lectures on the dangers of unchecked ambition. Families of the victims formed advocacy groups to ensure no other patient would fall prey to doctors who placed pride above compassion. Despite time passing, public fascination with the 5 women never faded. Their faces appeared in true crime specials and online forums, where people debated whether genius and madness had truly coexisted within them. Some viewed them as monsters, others as broken minds warped by the pressure of perfection. In prison, their health declined, yet none ever confessed or sought forgiveness. Each remained steadfast in her belief that her actions had purpose, that she had been misunderstood. Investigators continued to study their psychological profiles, hoping to find a pattern that could prevent future medical crimes. The story of these women reshaped how society viewed those in power, reminding everyone that even the most trusted professions are not immune to corruption. What began as individual acts of cruelty evolved into a national reckoning, exposing the fragile balance between knowledge and morality. The white coat, once a symbol of healing, became a chilling reminder of how authority can be misused. Today, their names are spoken not in respect, but as a warning. Brilliance without conscience is the most dangerous form of evil, and the greatest monsters can hide behind the promise to save lives.